Welcome with another Compliance Tuesday session, this time on packaging and packaging waste regulation. This is not the 1 hour live event that I did with our special guest, André Gierke, last Tuesday. If you were there, you were there. This is a summary session of that, speed dating on packaging and packaging waste regulation. And the slide deck that is provided is part of this summary. Welcome again, André. Thanks for spending some time with us on this topic, which is more in line with your regular daily business. Perhaps a quick chance for you to highlight who you are and what you and your company are doing for this planet.
Yeah, sure. Many thanks. I'm André Gierke, founder of EPR Compact. And to keep it simple, we enable producers, dealers, whoever deals with products to master EPR, extended producer responsibility obligations, in the companies, implementing best practices in this field.
And this PPWR is part of your daily life in that sense, no?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Main focus is packaging, indeed, electrical and electronic equipment, and the batteries as well. So many things to do, and even more connection to product compliance.
Great.
At the moment.
Welcome in this show.
Thank you. There
is already a regulation today, and let us remind the audience why there is an update. The goals of the previous regulations are actually similar as that of this, but they're not met, and there's various reasons for that. But just to give everybody in the audience a context, packaging in general uses a very high amount of virgin materials. Approximately 40% of plastics and 50% of papers used in the EU are used for packaging, and it accumulates to around 35%, a little bit more, 36 even, of municipal solid waste, which is a lot. I just need to look at what I am doing in general. I'm an e-commerce fan. I'm a gadget fan as well. So look at this planet and the EU market. They expect that the total number of packaging units will be doubling in 2030. And actually, we have a goal to reduce the total amount of single-use plastic and paper as part of packaging, to reduce that to 50% of the 2023 level. So roughly 25% of the future. That's an ambitious goal, and we are not on track on meeting that, and we need to speed up things. So we want to reduce the total amount of waste with 50% in 2030. We want to increase the percentages of the non-virgin material, recycled materials used, paper and plastic, and plastic is a little bit more complex. In order to do that, you need to collect also a lot and make it collectible. So making all the packaging reusable and recyclable at 2030. And there's another thing leading up to why it's a little bit more complex to do that. All the countries have some of their own policies. Everybody knows that. So we need to harmonize current legislation to create more benefits also for the industry to act faster and solve these issues. No time to waste, as we say. André, this refit of the packaging and packaging waste regulation, has been taking some time. Where are we today?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, what's the status quo? There have been votes in April, and they were positive, but now everything needs to get informed. And there's a draft, which probably is not the final one, because I expect that there will be some slight adjustments in a final version. But nevertheless, there is a draft, which is like a mixed document, over 300 pages, very complex. And what at the moment we're doing is that after the elections, there will be a restart in Brussels, especially because the key rapporteur, Frédéric Ries, and also 2 other shadow rapporteurs on this project have not been re-elected. So they need to be substituted. And furthermore, the Commission President and also commissioners have to be approved by the European Parliament. Right. They will be then formally appointed by the European Council. acting, well, by qualified majority. And this is expected to take place in October so that the new commission can take office on 1st November. And well, the PPWR is one of the main priorities in the European Commission. That's quite clear, and that's how they communicate it as well. And therefore, the restart then should be as soon as possible. So theoretically in November. And as a consequence, we assume that final votes will happen in either Q4 or Q1 2025 at the latest.
Okay. Okay, that's good. So actually, it's like a hiccup, but it's a natural hiccup because the election is basically causing it. I think it's also complex because it deals with two parts of legislation. On the one hand, you need to have packaging that complies with requirements because packaging basically is a product. And the other one is that you need to have packaging that you can recycle, and it has to be recycled. So it has the compliance part for what you need to do with packaging when you want to place it on the market, basically like a product. And then when you make it available to the end user, and what's happening when the packaging no longer becomes packaging. Quite complex. They try to arrange a lot, and it's not just about the ProductIP non-food scope. This is also about feed and food. So I tell you, when I look at the people that make comments, you see a lot of big brands, especially in the food sector, that are coming with that. All right. What about scope, André? Are they really changing scope as such?
Well, somehow, I mean, we already had like primary packaging, secondary packaging, and tertiary packaging in the past. That remains the same, more or less. They specified some things like primary production packaging, for example, which entered the scope or the definitions, especially. They defined, due to its relevance, e-commerce packaging. And this is, for example, defined as transport packaging. But however, and that's very relevant, certain aspects of primary packaging will apply to e-commerce packaging as well, such as registrations or system participation, and also labeling or information obligations that need to be fulfilled for e-commerce packaging as well. And I guess we should mention that, furthermore, some items such as tea bags or coffee capsules or other single-serve units have been added to the scope. In the past, they have been defined as a product or part of the product, therefore have not been in the scope, but this is going to change, which is probably quite reasonable. And for the first time, we will also have bans or prohibited packaging types in the scope or out of scope then.
It makes sense to have this dual approach for e-commerce packaging, because this is, of course, it's transportation packaging, but ultimo it ends up at the consumer's house.
Exactly.
So it's not like collected in a logistics center. Makes sense. All right. Maybe to address, because it's a legislation that talks about items that need to happen quickly, but also has targets moving up even to 2040. Maybe some basic timeline, some key events only.
Yeah, let's pick on those or focus on those. Well, let's assume that the publication of the PPWR in the official journal is expected in, let's say, Q1 2025.
Yeah.
The PPWR will then enter into force 18 months later. So there's a typical transition period. And as well, 18 months after publication of the PPWR in the official journal, the EU will release guidelines related to the harmonized labeling of packaging.
I think that's key.
Right. It's everybody wanted that and asked for that, right? These guidelines or these requirements related to labeling of packaging will then enter into force another 24 months later. And to be honest, this transition period probably is really necessary either for you, because you need to adapt packaging. But it's also required for the EU member states to ensure that, for example, all the waste bins or waste receptacles are marked appropriately. Another probably main date or key date is 2028. because we expect that the design for recycling guidelines will be released in 2028 and then define recyclability grades of packaging of A, B, and C, which are very relevant for dealing with packaging in the future, also for payments. And in 2030, which is definitely a key date, there are a whole lot of obligations related to 2030. And 2030, access to market is granted for recyclable packaging only, meaning that the recyclability grade C is the minimum requirement. And by the way, if we talk about recyclability grades and the related assessment, the assessment related or resulting in a recyclability grade will have to be part of the technical documentation.
Wow.
What do you think, Caspar? What are, from your point of view, what are the key requirements? We talked about dates, but what are the key requirements that are upcoming and, well, maybe changing the packaging world somehow?
Yeah. I would say from key requirements, you probably look at substances in order to make packaging recyclable. If you pollute the first batch of virgin packaging at a certain level, you cannot reuse it anymore. So you need to really trim down potential, for example, heavy metals. But that is not new. It remains the same. The thresholds for lead and cadmium and mercury and hexavalent chromium 6 that remain unchanged. Obviously, piggyback riding on the whole discussion about PFAS, they came with PFAS requirements for packaging as well, but they directed to food contact material related packaging. Various thresholds, 18 months transition periods, and they reserve the right to extend those limits to other types of packaging. You see, in general, what the EU is doing is creating more frameworks and addressing topics and saying, hey, we're going to address this topic, be aware of it. You need to be on your tiptoes for us at ProductIP. We need to follow different kind of publication streams to see what's happening there. But I can understand framework approach. It makes politically more sense because PFAS in general is of course a topic. Packaging was already defined as a product under REACH. So everything that is under REACH was already there. SVHCs over 0.1%. POP legislation is a separate part, but it's also acknowledging packaging as a product. There was some discussion about BPA for food contact materials. It's not in this framework. It's being addressed in the food contact material framework separately. Decision is expected 2024 from that framework, also with a transition period. One of the other things that is relevant with the SVHCs, you could say that France probably have initiated the whole discussion, although eco-design as well. On the SVHCs, you already need to record it at ECHA and the SCIP database, these substances of very high concern. Before SCIP, there was a business-to-business obligation of notification. Now there is a mandatory registration obligation. And now we're going to say, no, we want the public to know that there are substances of very high concern. The interesting thing for the packaging is that the threshold is not 0.1%. And they need to be mentioned in the digital product passport. 2030, yeah, 2030. But the number of SVHCs are increasing every 6 months.
Is a QR code fine, or how do I read?
Yeah, it's a QR code linking to a digital product passport. However, framework again with some empty space for the EU Commission to add another layer. They want to publish a report in December 2026 with additional substances of concern. I can tell you there's 2 or 3 that the French authorities are already mentioning. So be aware of that. So that I think it's quite interesting. There's a number of new words, André, in this legislation. Design for recyclability is one. There was another one, minimization requirements. What's that about?
Yeah, it's one of the main targets. I mean, you talked about reducing the amounts of packaging like
Right.
massive, and therefore we need to talk about minimization requirements. And there are two approaches. First one is that in order to comply with the packaging minimization requirements, which are in the text, particular attention should be paid to limiting empty space in grouped and transport packaging, including e-commerce packaging, because there's going to be an empty space ratio which should not exceed 50%. And
transportation packaging.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Including e-commerce. So we all know that we ordered something. We have a very huge
this big box with this SD card, right?
Right, exactly. Just a small product. This is not going to happen in the future, or shall not happen in the future. Right. So it's probably very important that also, the relevant logistics service providers or fulfillment service providers are aware of that, in order to optimize their processes. And furthermore, please notice, because this is very relevant, there is no empty space ratio defined for a primary product packaging, so for the sales packaging. But, and that's very important, to comply with the packaging minimization requirements for consumer sales product packaging, you need to demonstrate in your technical documentation why that specific product packaging cannot be minimized any further. We definitely expect more clarity on this in the design for recycling guidelines that are upcoming 2028. But it's a very interesting thing since, I mean, you talked about it, packaging is a product, and that also means that every packaging requires a declaration of conformity in the future.
Right. Good.
I always read things about like greenwashing, and there's that greenwashing directive regulation, right? What about claims and greenwashing? Can you tell me and the audience something about that?
Yeah, we cannot make the packaging smaller because we need to put all the green claims on there, André. So that will be in the technical file. We need place for all the logos and all the wording, and this is made of a compostable bio something. I think it's just copy paste from anti-greenwashing requirements that are also mentioned in other directives. It's a doublure of what is in other legislation. It should not be misleading. And basically, if you want to make any claims, they need to come from a certified source. The European already had eco certification programs, So I think what will happen is where now a lot of marketeers are almost try to free ride on these kind of claims. They probably will be banned by their legal teams. And on the other side of the spectrum, the industry, the ones that will make packaging and that will make plastic, etc., they will probably move into certifiable claims to be used as an add-on, as an added advantage. There's no way that retail and trade on one end of the spectrum can do a due diligence all through the supply chain to figure these kind of things out. Yeah, it will meet, but only certified claims, no greenwashing. Talk about labels.
What about CO2 neutral packaging?
Yeah, it will probably be similar. Can you certify that? Yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens with marketing if you really need to have a world in which products can be trusted, as we say. Talk about labels. I'll drop the ball back in your court. We discussed the slides before. This is the Truman world, the three-man world in this case. So, what will happen to that? All those people are looking forward to the new harmonized legislation, harmonized labeling. It will make life a little bit easier, especially if you can have the explanation of what labels need to be in a digital way. Nobody minds keeping a website up to date. It's a lot less work than adding text to printing, and we don't want to add text to printed material if we want to reduce printed material. So, but what about the 3-man?
Exactly. Yeah. You mentioned it. We have different labeling obligations in different member states at the moment. We have the Triman in France. We have Italian obligations. We have the Spanish obligations upcoming in 2025. We have new obligations also in Portugal, and further ones in different other member states.
Right.
What happened with those? Well, there's a transition period. We talked about the new labeling obligations, the harmonized ones, entering into force probably 42 months after the publication in the official journal.
Right.
And then the new labeling obligations enter into force. And from that time on, no member state is allowed to prohibit market access when packaging, including its labeling, fulfills EU harmonized obligations. Right. That's very good. And that's an improvement, definitely.
Sure.
But before that, we have obligations that are in force, and the member states still have the right to enforce their own non-harmonized labeling requirements before those 42 months.
So we say, hang in there. Yeah. It's going to get better.
You have to deal with it from, for around about 4 years from now, right? And then there will be light end of the
and I can also understand the transition period, as you mentioned. This is quite a unique transition period because it's also the not only the private sector that needs to adjust packaging, it's the public sector that needs to adjust information and communication to consumers as well. Both are not knowing to act very fast, unfortunately. We mentioned in the beginning, it's a very complex framework. There's two parts of legislations types actually merging. This is probably one of the things that you might have to explain most often in the first meetings with customers. Maybe a brief word on that, André.
Yeah, it's as I said earlier, right? It's a product compliance and EPR are combined in one framework, meaning that also like definitions are combined now. Therefore, there are, for the EPR world, there are like new roles, and also for the product compliance world, there are new roles and responsibilities. And if we take it from a product compliance point of view, a regular responsibilities apply when placing a product on the market, since we know the packaging is a product. Compliance of the packaging must be declared in the end by the manufacturer or the brand owner, right?
Right.
From an EPR, extended producer responsibility point of view, the entity that makes a product and its packaging available in a specific member state market will be called the producer in that member state, and therefore must handle tasks such as reporting, registration, and also paying levies, as you probably know.
Right.
What's quite new is that also logistics service providers and fulfillment service providers might be seen as producers for the waste packaging accumulating on their sites, which, they received from another member state or third country. Probably have to deal with it as well. And furthermore, last not least, that's very important to mention again and again and again, we're facing a collective responsibility. We do that in many legislations out there, but always remember every party in the supply chain is responsible for ensuring compliance and should also play an active role in market surveillance. So in fact, this is the general approach for all legislation.
Will be an interesting challenge, especially for large marketplaces.
Definitely. But also the dealers, the retail stores, if something is in your shelves which is not compliant, in the past, they refer to the manufacturer or brand owner or whoever, if it was someone you could talk to. But now in the future, it's not a problem to, besides that, talk to you and ask you for your processes. How come that those products ended up in your shelves? What do you do against it?
Yeah.
Let's come to an end, more or less. Caspar, we have 2024, right? We talked about one of the key dates, 2030. So transition periods somehow seem to be long. What do you think? Why should we start dealing with PPWR already today?
Um, I was thinking about it. We thought about it earlier, and even now when we do this session again, Andre, I was thinking about if you look at, for example, the amount of packaging and the variations of packaging that a company has, if nothing would change, and you need to start grading them as A or B or C, and you have never considered design guidelines for recyclability at all, the amount of work is humongous.
And
And
how will it
then
be? Because sometimes your supplier just takes the packaging which is on its desk
exactly,
and just
exactly.
someone this and someone no.
So it's almost like a fresh start, and it takes tremendous time to develop a concept and to develop a packaging concept because you need to consider there are marketing and branding aspects, but there are also handling aspects. They need to be packed in volumes. They need to be transported. They need to be taken care of in stores. It's not very easy. It takes a lot of time. So developing new packaging concept will require considerable time. Then you look at how many people are involved in the supply chain. If I'm buying a product from you, you might pack the product, but you don't make the packaging material. You get the packaging materials. And as soon as I say that, you get the packaging materials already from 4 or 5 different entities. You have an inner carton from Mr. A and an outer carton from Mr. B, and the two parts of the double clamshell from Mr. C, who makes this one. But the carton box maybe comes from a wholesaler who doesn't make the carton boxes. It comes from a carton box factory who doesn't make the carton. My God, you are ending up with a big tree with a lot of tiers and a lot of entities, and every entity you start to know as a business automatically drops in the box of ESG, CSR, social compliance, environmental compliance. I think what you need to do as a business, if you want to look at where you can reduce the volumes most, that's already a challenge. You start with the 20/80 rule and pick the 20% of product that creates 80% of packaging and packaging waste, and start to limit the scope of the problem first. Yeah, but you're not the only one that's going to do that. Yeah. Right. Looking at the capacities in the market for companies dealing with these kind of topics, if you always bought the packaging from somebody, you really think that there's a lot of expertise on recyclability in that part of the market? I'm not sure. So I would say start considering making packaging designs and 20/80 part of your products already, and start to limit the numbers of entities in your supply chain already. And at ProductIP, we're already considering, and you probably will move to separate packaging files in order to deal with compliance aspects. Because there also will come a declaration of conformity for packaging. And if it's so, that means all the products, even those without CE, will have a declaration of conformity because they all have packaging. No, we just have a tie wrap with a hang tag. Yeah, packaging. Yeah. And if you have a product with a declaration of conformity because it's in a CE regime, you need to start merging documents. Okay, try to do that in Excel. And this is just one of the tsunami on all kind of things. And it might be the least invasive when you start to ask questions into the supply chain, but the amount of data, look at all the parts in packaging and the data you need to have to support SVHCs in all those parts coming from all kind of different suppliers. You have tape with glue. Which glue? Which tape? Oh, the factory changed the tape. Start again. So reduce complexity first. And reducing complexity first seems the logic thing to do. But giving the rhythm of retail and trade, it will take up to 2.5 years. And then we're running into the other. This is manufacturing hell, as Elon Musk would say, but then on the packaging side. This requires a lot of effort. Yeah. So why start now? Last thing, why start now? One more thing on that one. The whole rhythm of dealing with compliance is not just SKU, not article based. Will be batch based. So the transition we all need to shift into a higher gear. yeah, it's you need to start to get your whole supply chain involved in dealing with that, and we're working hard on that. So
control, traceability, gathering data.
Yeah, packaging will get, we can say packaging is a product, but packaging will get its own part number, because otherwise, how to connect packaging with a technical file, how to connect packaging with a declaration of conformity.
Could there be recalls for packaging?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right.
So we are building. You are also, but from the consultancy part. But at ProductIP, we are obviously integrating data fields in data models, etc., etc. Even we don't know the details of the framework. We know the basic blocks already. Yeah. So I would say, and I'll give you the final word on this. It makes all sense from a one planet approach, from a point of stewardship. It makes sense. I would say nobody in the supply chain would argue with that it would make sense.
Right.
But does it also make business sense?
Probably in the long term. Yeah. I mean, if we talk about does investing in recyclability pay off?
Mm-hmm.
I would say, yeah, it already does today in some member states.
Right.
But especially in order to achieve those ambitious goals, which are
Mm-hmm.
there will be a harmonized accumulation approach as well, based on those recyclability grades A, B, and C.
Okay.
And to put it in a nutshell, the more recyclable packaging is, the less you pay in the future. That's about it.
Right.
But maybe side mark on this, please note, because this is something probably not going to be harmonized. Fees and reporting requirements will still continue to vary among different member states, and especially the producer compliance schemes.
Right. Okay. So if you want to walk up ahead of the pack and move to B and A grade, when just C grade it becomes mandatory, you already will have some benefits, but the benefits might differ in various markets. All right, lovely. Thanks a lot, André, for this roundup session. Still half an hour, something like that, but the topic requires that. I would say see you soon again, because I think we need to redo this somewhere in Q4 or Q1 of this or next year, because then we have more clarity on this. For now, we say both bye to all of you, and if you like this video, subscribe and like. Same goes for if you see this on the EPR Compact YouTube platforms. Thanks for now.
Perfect.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.